I used to help run a Sunday school at a church in the Midlands. I won't say which one, it's still active. And what I'm about to tell you isn't something the church has even acknowledged. The kids were young, 4 to 6. It was a small group, 8 to 12 children, depending on the week. We'd meet in the basement while the main service happened upstairs. Standard stuff. Bible stories simplified for little ones, colouring sheets, juice and biscuits, carpet time. The basement wasn't creepy, I want to be clear about that. It wasn't some dark Victorian cellar. It was a purpose-built room from the 1960s. Low ceiling, fluorescent strip lights, pale blue walls, a stack of tiny plastic chairs in the corner. It smelled like poster paint and carpet cleaner. It was bright and warm and completely ordinary. I'd been volunteering there for about 7 months when it started. It was a Sunday in late October. I'd given the kids a free drawing session at the end. 10 minutes, draw whatever you like, or stick the best ones on the wall. The children sat at 3 separate tables. They didn't share materials between the tables, and at that age they barely interacted with kids outside their immediate group. They were in their own little worlds. When I collected the drawings, I stacked them without looking. I usually pinned them up later, but that afternoon, back at home, I spread them out on my kitchen table to pick which ones to display. 3 of the drawings stopped me. 3 children sat at 3 different tables who hadn't spoken to each other, who hadn't seen each other's work, had drawn the same thing. A tall man standing in the corner of the room. Not a stick figure the way kids usually draw people. This was a dense black scribble, heavy crayon pressed hard into the paper, forming a long, narrow shape. No face, no features, just a dark shape, roughly the height of the ceiling in each drawing. And in all 3, the hands were wrong. Too many fingers, long, spindly, spreading out from the wrists like the branches of a dead tree. I'd stared at them for a long time. Kids draw strange things, I knew that, but 3 kids drawing the same strange thing, independently, unprompted, that sat differently. The next Sunday, I asked one of the 3 children about her drawing, a little girl named Lily, quiet, thoughtful. She'd drawn the figure most clearly. You could see the corner of the room in the background, the edge of the bookshelf, the little window near the ceiling. I asked her who the tall person in her picture was. She didn't look up from her colouring. She just said, "He's always standing there. He watches you the most." The room was bright. The fluorescent lights were humming. 8 children were chattering around me, and I have never felt so cold in my life. I started watching that corner, the far corner, to the left of the door, between the bookshelf and the wall. There was nothing there, just carpet and paint and a small damp stain near the skirting board, but I noticed something I hadn't before. The temperature in that corner was different, not dramatically. I wouldn't have felt it if I wasn't paying attention, but if I stood near the bookshelf, the air was noticeably cooler. Not drafty, still, cold and still, like the air inside a closed wardrobe. And there was a smell, faint. I only caught it when I was within a metre of the corner. It wasn't damp, it wasn't mould, it was something organic, sweet and faintly rotten, like flowers left in a vase too long, like something that had once been alive and was now very slowly coming apart. 2 weeks later, I took the drawings home again. This time, 4 children had drawn the figure. A 4th child, a boy who'd only started attending the month before, who'd never seen the previous drawings, had drawn it in exactly the same position, same corner, same black scribble, same wrong hands. He added one detail the others hadn't, a mouth. Not on the face. The figure didn't have a face. The mouth was on the chest, wide, open, full of small, sharp triangles. I took the drawings to the vicar. I laid them out on his desk and asked if anyone had ever reported anything about the basement. He looked at them for a long time. His face didn't change, but his hands did. He pressed them flat on the desk like he was steadying himself. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "You're not the first volunteer to bring me these." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat up in my bed with the lights on, scrolling my phone, trying to think about anything else. At 3:15 AM, my Ring doorbell camera triggered. I got the notification on my phone. Motion detected. Person detected. I opened the app. The footage showed my front garden. Empty. Still. Porch light on. Hedge line dark. No person. No animal. Nothing. But the system had flagged it as person detected. Not motion. Person. I took a screenshot and zoomed in. And at the very edge of the frame, right side, near the hedge where the porch light didn't reach, there was a shape. Tall, dark, narrow, standing completely still. And at the bottom of the shape, where the hands would be, there was something spread outwards. Too many points, too many fingers. It had followed me home, where I had already known where I had lived. I quit the Sunday school the next morning. I called the vicar and told him exactly what I'd seen. The doorbell footage, the drawings, the cold in the corner, the smell. There was a long pause. Then he said, "There was another volunteer, before you. She left for the same reasons. Her name is Karen. I think you should speak to her." He gave me her number. I called her that afternoon. She agreed to meet. We sat in a cafe in the town and she put her phone on the table between us and opened her photos. She showed me a drawing, done in crayon, a tall black figure in the corner of the room. Wrong hands, no face. It had been drawn by her daughter at the same Sunday school in 2019. 4 years before the children in my group drew the same thing. Her daughter was 10 now. She didn't draw anymore. Karen said she stopped suddenly, about a month after making that picture. When Karen asked her why she stopped drawing, the girl said, "The man in the corner told me to stop. He said if I kept drawing him, he'll come to our home." Karen's voice was steady when she told me this, but her hands were shaking. I asked if he ever did come to her home. She didn't answer. She just picked up her phone and closed the photos. I didn't go back to the church. I didn't go near it, but a vicar called me a month later. He said they were repainting the basement, upgrading it, new walls, new lighting, new carpet, a fresh start. When the contractor stripped the old wallpaper in the far corner, the corner every child had pointed to, the corner that smelled like dying flowers and dropped the temperature around it like a pocket of winter, they found something underneath. Scratched into the plaster, not written, carved, by hand, deep enough that the grooves had survived 60 years beneath the paper. A single sentence. "Do not teach them to see." The wallpaper was original to the building. It had been applied in 1964 when the basement was first converted. Whatever carved that sentence did it before the room was ever used as a Sunday school. Before the first child ever sat in that room and picked up a crayon. It knew, before any of us were born, it knew what that room would be used for, and it left a warning. Not for us, for anyone who might try to stop it. The church repainted the wall. They covered the sentence with fresh plaster and 2 coats of white emulsion. The Sunday school still runs. new volunteers, new children. I think about those kids sometimes. I wonder what they draw when no one's collecting the pictures. I wonder if the corner is still cold. I wonder if the smell ever comes back. And I wonder whether the man in the corner is angry that somebody finally read his message, or whether that was exactly what he wanted. In 2019, the year before the world shut down, I did something stupid. I was 20 years old, in my second year at university in the north of England, and I agreed to a dare that I regretted every day since. There was a church on the edge of town, Catholic, Victorian, big red brick building with a square tower and boarded up windows. Had been sold to a developer, but the project stalled, and by the time I came along it was mid-demolition. The roof was half gone, the pews had been ripped out, scaffold lined the walls like a metal skeleton. My friends, Callum and Jordan, had been past it a dozen times. One night in the pub, Callum said he'd give me 50 quid to spend the night inside, midnight to 6 AM, alone. I said make it 100. He said 70. I said done. I got in through the side door that didn't latch properly. I had a sleeping bag, a torch, a fully charged phone, and a full pack of lager. I figured I'd sit in the back corner, drink, scroll my phone, and collect my money in the morning. The inside was gutted, bare walls, exposed brick, plaster dust everywhere. The altar was gone, the stations of the cross had been pulled off the walls, leaving dark rectangular shadows where they'd hung. The air tasted like chalk and old stone. Every sound I made, every footstep, every zip of my bag came back to me a half second later, pounced off walls that were used to silence. One thing was still intact. At the back of the church, near where the entrance would have been, the confession box was still standing. Dark wood, carved panels, 2 compartments. One for the priest, one for the penitent. A mesh screen between them. It looked ancient. It looked like the one thing in the building that the demolition crew hadn't wanted to touch. I set up about 10 meters from it, sleeping bag on the floor, back against the wall. I cracked a lager and I tried to settle. The first hour was fine, boring even. I watched videos on my phone with one earbud in. The building creaked and ticked around me like the way old buildings do. Scaffold rattled faintly when the wind picked up. Normal. It was around 2 AM when I took the earbud out to listen for something. I thought I heard a fox outside, and that's when I noticed it. Breathing. Not wind, not the building settling. Breathing. Rhythmic. Wet. Coming from inside the confession box. It sounded like someone with fluid in their lungs. A thick, laboured inhale followed by a slow, rattling exhale. Perfectly steady, perfectly even, like someone was asleep, or like someone pretending to be. I didn't move for about 30 seconds. I sat there with my lager can in my hand and my heart hitting the back of my ribs, and I listened. It didn't stop. It didn't change. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. I stood up. I walked towards the confession box. I don't know why. I think a part of me needed it to be a burst pipe or a bird or the wind through a crack. I needed it to be something. I reached the box. The priest's side was closest to me. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open with my torch hand and shone the beam inside. Empty, bare wood, a small bench, nothing. But I put my hand on the wood of the partition wall, the wall between the priest's side and the penance side, and I pulled it back immediately. It was warm, not faintly warm, not ambient warm, body warm, the kind of warm that wood gets when someone had been leaning against it, pressing their back to it, sitting there for a long time. The breathing continued from the other side. I should have left, I know that now, but I was 20 and I was scared. And when you're scared at 20, you sometimes do the wrong thing just to prove you're not. I crouched down by the mesh screen, the small panel between the two compartments where the confessions would have been whispered. I put my face close to it. I could feel air moving through the mesh, warm air, like breathing. I said, "Hello?" I meant it as a joke, a nervous, stupid joke to break the tension, to make myself feel like I was in control. Something responded. Not with words, not with a voice. It breathed back at me, but not regular breathing. My breathing, my exact pattern, the sharp, swallow, shallow inhale I'd just taken, followed by the short exhale through my nose, replayed perfectly, inhale for inhale, pause for pause. It was mimicking me, not roughly, not approximately, exactly, like a recording played back through wet, ruined lungs. I scrambled backwards. I grabbed my sleeping bag, my phone, my bag. I didn't grab the lager. I didn't care. I went for the side door and I didn't look back. As I crossed the threshold, the breathing stopped, all at once, mid-inhale, like it had been switched off. And in the silence that followed, 1 second, maybe 2, I heard something else from inside the confession box. A sound I will never forget. Wood creaking, the slow, deliberate creak of someone standing up. I ran through the side alley, across the car park, and I didn't stop until I was under a street light 200 meters away. I called Callum. He laughed. He said I was winding him up. I told him everything. The breathing, the warmth, the mimicry. He and Jordan thought it was hilarious. They went back the next night, without telling me, and filmed themselves sitting in the confession box, priest sides, penitent side, laughing, making jokes, doing their best horror movie impressions. They sent me the video the next morning. "See? Nothing's here, mate. You owe us 70 quid. I watched the video once, then I watched it again, then I went frame by frame. At the 4:17 mark, Callum is sitting on the penitent side, talking to the camera. Jordan is on the priest side, out of shot. The mesh screen is visible behind Callum's head. In one frame, a single frame, a fraction of a second, the mesh is distorted. It's bulging outwards, towards Callum, like something on the priest's side is pressing against it. Not pushing, pressing, slowly, the way you'll press your face into a screen to get as close as possible to someone on the other side. The frame before, normal. The frame after, normal. But just that one frame, 1/24th of a second. I screenshotted it. I sent it to them both. Callum said it was a shadow. Jordan said it was a compression artifact. They told me just to let it go. I couldn't let it go. They couldn't understand why. That was the beginning of the end of those friendships. Not a dramatic falling out, just a slow, quiet severance. I became the one who couldn't take a joke, the one who got weird after the church thing. We stopped meeting up, stopped texting. By the end of that year, I didn't hear from either of them. I lost my closest friends over something they refused to see in a video they filmed themselves. I posted the screenshot on a paranormal forum about 2 years later. I didn't give details, just the image and a brief description. Screen grab from a video filmed inside a disused Catholic church. Can anyone explain the distortion in the mesh? Most of the replies were what you'd expect. Lens flare, JPEG artifact. One person said it was a cobweb. But one reply was different. A woman, new account, No post history. She sent me a private message. She said her grandfather had been a priest at that church in the 1970s. He served there for 6 months before requesting an emergency transfer to another parish. It was granted without question, which she said was unusual. Transfers normally took months. Her grandfather never spoke about why he left, not to the bishop, not to the family. He was a quiet man, she said, and whatever happened in that church made him quieter. Except once, near the end of his life, in a hospice in 2014, he told her one thing. She said he gripped her hand when he said it. She said his eyes were clear, not confused, not medicated, clear and terrified. He said, "Something else hears the confessions and it doesn't forgive." She asked me if I heard breathing from inside the box. I said yes. She said, he heard it too, every night, for 6 months. I asked her what she thought it was. She didn't reply. Her account was deleted within the week. I never heard from her again. The church was fully demolished in 2022, flattened, turned into a car park for a retail estate next door. There's nothing there now, just tarmac and white lines and a pay and display machine. But I looked up the demolition records. Every part of that building was catalogued and removed. The bricks, the timber, the scaffold, the glass. Everything accounted for. Everything except one thing. The confession box. It's not in any skip manifest. No one knows where it went. In the autumn of 2021, I took a temporary job as an overnight security guard at a cathedral in the north of England. I won't name it, you'll recognise if I did, and I don't want what happened to me attached to a place people still go to pray. The cathedral was mid-renovation, scaffold covered the east wing, dust sheets hung from the arches like dead skin. During the day, it was full of contractors, clergy, visitors, but between 10 PM and 6 AM, it was all mine. The job was simple: walk the building every hour, check the locks on the main doors, the vestry, the crypt gate, log anything unusual, sit in the small office by the south entrance in between, read, watch something on my phone, stay awake. When I was hired, the facilities manager told me the previous guard had quit with no notice. He said it casually. I asked if there was a reason. He said, "Some people don't like old buildings at night." He smiled when he said it. I didn't think anything of it. The cathedral at night was another world. During the day, it was beautiful. Golden stone, stained glass, the smell of wood polish and old hymn books. At night, all that disappeared. The stone turned grey, the windows went black, and the smell changed. It didn't smell like a church anymore. It smelled old. Not musty, not damp. Old in the way soil is old, like something beneath the floor was breathing out. The nave was the longest part of my route, 100 metres of open stone floor, lined on both sides with tombs. Medieval effigies, knights, bishops, noble women, carved from limestone, lying on their backs, hands folded, eyes closed. Some of them were over 600 years old. I didn't mind them at first. They were stone. They'd been lying there since before the Black Death. They were furniture. That changed on my third night. I had a habit from a previous security job. I photographed everything on my first shift. Every door, every lock, every room. It gave me a baseline. If something changed, I'd know. On my first night, I photographed each of the effigies as I walked the nave. I didn't study them. I just pointed my phone and I clicked. 14 tombs, 14 photos. On the third night, I did my 1 AM round. I walked the nave with my torch as usual, and something stopped me. I didn't know what it was immediately. It was a feeling, the kind you get when a picture on your wall is slightly crooked. You don't see it straight away, you just feel that something in the room is wrong. I swept my torch across the effigies, and then I found it. The seventh tomb, a knight, full armour, sword at his side, a dog carved at his feet. On my first night, I noticed his hands were folded across his chest, fingers laced, peaceful. Now his left hand was at his side. I stood there for a long moment. I told myself I was wrong. I told myself I remembered it differently. But I had the photo. I took my phone out, I opened it, and compared. In the photo from night 1, both hands were folded across the chest, fingers laced, exactly as I remembered. Now, the left hand lay flat against the stone slab, the fingers were slightly opened, and the dust around the effigy, a fine layer of renovation dust that covered everything in the cathedral, had been disturbed. Not footprints, not handprints, just shifted, as if something heavy had moved very slowly. Stone doesn't move, I knew that. I said it to myself 3 times as I walked back to the office. Stone doesn't move. I reported it the next morning. The renovation foreman checked the tomb and shrugged. He said the effigies weren't part of the project. No one in his crew had touched them. He suggested vibration from the scaffold work might have shifted the dust. He didn't explain the hand. I went back that night, 4th shift. I did my 11 PM round and I stopped at the 7th tomb. I stared at it for a full minute. The left hand was still at the side. Nothing had changed since the night before. I decided to settle it. I propped my phone on the windowsill opposite the tomb, angled it at the night, and set it to record. 6 hours. I'd review it in the morning. I finished my rounds. I sat in the office. I checked the locks at midnight, at 1 AM, and at 2 AM. Each time I passed the night, I glanced at it. Each time, nothing had changed. The phone recorded silently from the still. At 6 AM, I collected my phone, battery nearly dead. I took it home and plugged it in and let it charge while I slept. That afternoon, I reviewed the footage. 6 hours and 11 minutes of stone night lying on the tomb in the torchlight. Nothing moved, not a shadow, not a flicker. The footage was perfectly still. But I didn't just watch it, I listened. For the first 5 hours and 40 minutes, there was nothing. Cathedral silence, the occasional creak of scaffold in the wind, a pigeon somewhere in the rafters. At the 5:41 mark, which put the time at approximately 3:33 in the morning, there was a sound. Stone scraping against stone. It was slow, deliberate, not a crack or a pop, a dragging sound, heavy and grinding. It lasted 11 seconds. I timed it. I played it back 4 times. 11 seconds of something made of stone moving in a way that stone should not move. Then silence. Then, at 5:42 mark, something else. My name. Not whispered, not shouted, stated, calmly, clearly, like someone reading it off a list. One time, my full name, first and surname, in a voice I didn't recognise. A voice that sounded dry, like air being pushed through a throat that hadn't been used in a very long time. I played it back 6 times to make sure I wasn't hearing things. I wasn't. It was my name, spoken in a dark cathedral at 3:33 in the morning, next to a stone figure whose hands had moved in the night. I didn't go back that night. I sat in my flat with the lights on and the footage playing on loop, and I tried to convince myself there was an explanation. Sound carries strangely in old buildings. Someone could have broken in. The audio could have picked up radio frequency, a phone signal, something. But none of that explained the hand. None of that explained how something knew my name. I emailed my resignation the next morning. I didn't give a reason. I didn't need to. The facilities manager replied within an hour. One line. Understood. Thank you for your time. No questions, no pushback. Like he'd been expecting it. The cathedral hired a replacement within the week. A younger man, early 20s. I know this because the facilities manager forwarded me a message asking if I'd be willing to brief my replacement on the building layout. I said no. I didn't explain why. I just said no. That guard lasted 9 days. On the 9th night, he called 999 from inside the cathedral. The call was 8 seconds long. I know this because it was reported in the local paper, briefly, buried in the sidebar, framed as a medical incident at a heritage site. In those 8 seconds, he said one sentence. It's not on the tomb anymore. He was found the next morning by the first contractor on site. He was sitting in the nave, upright, eyes open. He wasn't injured, he wasn't unconscious, but he wasn't responsive. He didn't speak, he didn't react. He just stood there, facing the tomb, as though he was waiting for something to come back and lie down. He never spoke about what happened. He never returned to work, not to the cathedral, not anywhere. I tried to reach him once, through a mutual contact. He declined. The only thing he said was, I don't go near old buildings. The cathedral quietly stopped hiring night wardens after that. The renovation was completed on a daytime only schedule. No one was inside after dark. I drove past it 6 months later. It was 3 AM. I don't know why I was on that road. I told myself it was the quickest route home. Maybe it was. The scaffold was gone. The east wing looked immaculate. Clean stone, new glass, beautiful. But the lights were on. The east wing lights, the ones I used to turn off every night at the end of my shift, were on at 3 AM in a building that was supposed to be empty, and in the window, just for a second, just at the edge of what my headlights caught, there was a shape. It wasn't standing like a statue anymore. It was standing like a man, upright, arms at his side, facing the road. Like it was waiting for someone to come back inside. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop. I pressed the accelerator and I didn't look in the mirror. I haven't driven past that cathedral since, and I won't, because I know what I saw in my car, and I think it remembers my name.